Hello fellow booktubers, my name is Lauren, you're watching Dreams Books Courage, and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different video. Today we are going to be talking about what makes a classic. We've all had required reading to do in school, and so pretty much all of us have at least touched on some classics. But I feel like sometimes the world of classics kind of gets muddled. Some might even consider Harry Potter or The Hunger Games to be a classic, but that's not necessarily true. So I looked up a few articles on this just to see what really makes up a classic and why we consider it a classic. So I'll go ahead and read those to you now. So the first characteristic that we have for a classic is that a classic usually expresses some type of artistic quality. So it could be like an expression of life or truth or beauty. Next we have that a classic stands the test of time. And I've talked a bit with my English teacher on this one, and she says that it takes around like 50 years to become a classic, and that sounds like a good time limit to me as well. Then we have that a classic has a certain type of universal appeal. And what that means is that the themes within the books are just widely understood by so many different types of people. And the final one we have is that a classic makes connections. So first, let's go ahead and talk about how a classic holds some type of artistic quality. And for an example, I'm going to be talking about The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I'm actually currently reading this book, but I can already tell the types of artistic quality that are held within it. There's such a vitality that exists within this book whenever you're reading it, and you really feel like you're experiencing being in the 1920s at the parties that Gatsby throws. And there's a huge artistic quality that comes with beauty and life, because like a very famous symbol from Gatsby, which is the green light, that is usually defined as the American dream. It's this kind of unreachable desire that we all yearn for and we all want, but it seems to be just out of our reach. And I would say that a lot of times these artistic qualities do come in the forms of themes and symbols, and these artistic qualities are usually universal. And so I think a great example of that is the green light within Gatsby. The next characteristic is that a classic stands the test of time, and this is mostly where people get muddled on what a classic really means, because all the books like the Hunger Games trilogy and the Harry Potter series and the Kite Runner all seem like they're classics because of the other characteristics that they have. In the big scheme of things, they really haven't been around for that long. So I can definitely see all these books becoming classics. They're not really there yet because they haven't even been around for 20 years. But whenever they hit that 50-year mark and they actually still hold relevance in the world, that's when you can really see that these books are classics. I think a great example of classic literature standing the test of time would definitely be seen within pretty much all of William Shakespeare's plays. Personally, I read Hamlet, Macbeth, Romeo and Juliet, and Julius Caesar, and they all seem to hold qualities that I really find within myself and within the world around me. Although these works were written in a completely different time period than the one I'm experiencing right now, they definitely still hold relevance, and that's a very hard thing as an author in general. But especially when you can't really predict the future or see how things are going to change. So because William Shakespeare has these universal elements that are within his works, that's really why we still read Shakespeare, along with the beautiful language that's within it. Next we have that the classic holds a certain universal type of appeal, and for this I'm still going to go along with the example of Shakespeare, particularly in Hamlet, because within Hamlet we have this young prince, and his father has been murdered and his uncle has become king now, and he's just dealing with a lot of problems. But the main problems he really has is that he's just full of selfishness, and pretty much all of his soliloquies, especially the one that a lot of us know and love, which is the to be or not to be soliloquy. We see that throughout a lot of this play. Hamlet just doesn't really know what to do. Like, he's stuck between two extremes and he just can't really make any decisions whatsoever. And so I think that this play is definitely very universally appealing because, especially as teenagers, we don't really know what we're going to be doing, and we're not very decisive about things whatsoever. So whether or not we're facing extremes or we just can't decide on something very simple, we still know how Hamlet feels in these moments of weakness and how he has to decide such big things in his life just like we do. And so all of this story takes place in a completely different setting than the ones we experience today. We can definitely connect with the inner problems that Hamlet has. And so the last characteristic that I'm going to be talking about today within classics is that a classic makes connections. And what this means is that a classic makes connections with like history and literature that it deals with before its time. And so I've decided to use two examples for this one, and that is 1984 by George Orwell and A Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is really where the dystopian genre started. Of course, now we have a lot of dystopians like the Hunger Games trilogy and the Divergent trilogy, and a lot of times those kind of take ideas from these past works. But what we have to realize whenever Aldous Huxley Huxley and George Orwell were really coming up with these ideas was that they weren't just going off of nothing and creating a setting that we've never seen before. Communism has existed for a long time and it continues to exist in some parts of the world. And so what Orwell and Huxley tried to show is that we could be headed for this kind of life ourselves, and the dangers that come with trying to create a utopian world often becomes a dystopian in which things are just way worse than we could ever possibly imagine them to be. And so there are definitely deep historical connections within these works, and that's why they're so universal. And that's why they continue to be universal to today. I would definitely recommend you guys read both of these novels because if you've read The Hunger Games or anything like that, you're only touching on the basis of what a dystopian really consists of. Within these two novels, they really explore the inner workings of a dystopian and the connections that happen within this type of government. Now, since we've looked over those characteristics of what a dystopian really is, we can see that even if we have certain types of required reading within our classes, that doesn't necessarily make them classic literature. Like, I know that The Hunger Games have been taught within schools, and also The Kite Runner, but those works can't be considered classic literature yet. But I definitely think they will be eventually. Along with that, we have the Harry Potter series, and I think it also has a lot of characteristics within this. Although it is a middle grade series because of the qualities and characteristics it has, I think that within a few decades this will definitely be considered a classic. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I would really love to know down below what you think of classic literature and what your favorite classic is. My favorite is probably Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, but I really love 1984. I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna go get back to reading.